Up for many on Tuesday, but still areas of cloud floating around for northern, central and southeast England, and here we'll see some showers developing once again. Also showers drifting in for Scotland and Northern Ireland, in between some sunny spells. I think the best of any dry and sunny weather will be across Wales and the southwest. 22, 23 Celsius here, 25 for London, 16, 17s for Scotland and Northern Ireland, so feeling quite fresh. And then the breeze eases finally on Tuesday night, and with light winds, with clear spells for many, a cooler night to come. Showers in the north and the east continue for a time before eventually disappearing. And Thursday and Friday, well, it's roughly similar. Bright spells and showers, and temperatures not far from average.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Hello and welcome to The Briefing. I'm Esther McVeigh, standing in for Gloria De Piero. Here's what's coming up over the next hour. We are, of course, following the Conservative leadership race. And after a weekend of pretty brutal campaigning, the two contenders, Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak, are preparing to face each other in a TV debate tonight. I'll speak to prominent Rishi backer Robert Halfon later. Also, I'm pleased to say I'm joined by former Health Secretary Jeremy Hunt, who will be here joining me to discuss the claims by MPs that NHS is facing the worst staffing crisis in its history. And Labour leader Keir Starmer has been speaking this morning, promising growth. The Labour MP for Chester, Chris Matheson, joins me to discuss that and to talk about how the war in Ukraine is driving food prices up and making life even tougher for our farmers. And as always, I'm keen to hear from you. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews.
A very good afternoon. It's just a couple of minutes past 12. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. MPs are warning the greatest staffing crisis in NHS history is creating a serious risk to patient safety. The Health and Social Care Committee says research shows the health service is short of 12,000 doctors and 50,000 nurses and midwives. It also warns the government has no decisive strategy to help. NHS doctor Anita Raja told us the problem is years in the making.
This is not something that has happened overnight. This has been going on for years on end, decades and decades, but nobody has been taking this seriously. I mean, we've come up with different recruitment techniques, taking people from abroad, but the problem is not recruitment, the problem is retention.
An independent review has found Cricket Scotland to be institutionally racist. The report by the consultancy firm Plan for Sport cites over 440 examples and failings in 29 out of 31 indicators. Cricket Scotland's entire board resigned before the report's publication this morning, saying it would allow the new structures to be created to implement its recommendations. The final two candidates to become Prime Minister will face their first televised head-to-head debate tonight. Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss have been trading blows over immigration, China and tax cuts over the weekend. The Foreign Secretary and the former Chancellor are vowing to toughen controls on migration. Education Secretary James Cleverly supports Liz Truss. He told us she's showed she's capable of making tough decisions.
I've seen how she's worked as Foreign Secretary. I've seen how she's conducted herself on the world stage. I've seen how she's taken long-standing, consistent positions on China, for example, on making the most of the fact we've left the European Union. I think that Liz has got an outstanding track record over many, many years on some of the issues that are facing the country today, and I really hope she has the opportunity to explain those fully.
Conservative MP for Thirsk Malton, Kevin Hollenrake, is backing Rishi Sunak. He told us that Sunak has a clear plan to take the country forward.
She's got all the features we need from somebody who can beat Labour in the next election, which is crucial, of course. He is a genuine, authentic Brexiteer. That's the most important thing right now. I think we need somebody who understands Brexit, who campaigned for Brexit, and somebody who can make the most of it, because I think there's a world of opportunity out there. Rishi's proven himself time and time again over the last 2 years, dealing with two huge crises in this country. First of all, the COVID crisis, and now the cost of living crisis. I think he's got the intellect and the ideas and the ability to innovate and implement.
Police are investigating after a death threat was made against Government Trade Minister Penny Mordaunt. A letter sent to the former Tory leadership candidate's constituency office reportedly threatened to shoot her in the head. It was received before she was eliminated from the contest to become Prime Minister. Hampshire Police say measures have been put in place to protect her and her family. Sir Keir Starmer says the next Labour government will prioritise growth, growth, growth. During a speech in Liverpool, the Labour leader condemned the Tories government's record over the last decade, saying the UK economy is weaker than our competitors. He also criticised the two candidates vying to become Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss, saying they don't understand the modern economy. Sir Keir said he would make sure that growth was strong, secure and fair.
Whether it's the cost of living crisis, as Rachel has said, or recovering from the pandemic, our economy is weaker than our competitors, less resilient, brittle, and ultimately we're all poorer for it. That's why I'm clear. Labour will fight the next election on economic growth. There is no task more central to my ambitions for Britain than making the country and its people better off.
Ferry passengers travelling to France are being advised to arrive at least 2 hours before their scheduled departure. Ferry operator DFDS says the extra time's needed to complete all border control checks, with queues of around an hour. Well, the AA warned holidaymakers they could face ongoing travel delays this summer at Dover and Folkestone. Dover port officials say their summer plan will prevent any tailbacks. A bird flu outbreak on one of the UK's most important habitats is being described as an unprecedented wildlife tragedy. The National Trust confirmed that over 3,000 seabirds have now died off the Farne Islands off of the coast of Northumberland. Rangers there believe this is just the tip of the iceberg and say urgent actions needed to protect declining colonies. It's feared the outbreak could potentially kill tens of thousands of seabirds. This is GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's head back to the briefing.
Welcome to the show. I'm Esther McVeigh, standing in for Gloria De Piero. And after a weekend of furious briefings and counter-briefings to the papers, the two candidates to be our next Prime Minister, Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak are preparing to go head-to-head in a televised debate later this evening. Well, joining me now is Tom Harwood, our political correspondent. I always say you've got your ear to the ground, you know what's happening. So what have you been hearing?
Well, there's so much going on in what will be the third public debate between these two candidates and the first public debate between just the two of them head-to-head. And no doubt there will be some blows to be traded tonight. One of the stories that has made its way into the public ahead of this debate this morning has been over Russian sanctions, most specifically over British government sanctions on Russian gas imports. Now, Russian gas has only ever made up about 3% of imports to the UK, not the biggest thing in the world. But interestingly, some sources around Liz Truss have been now putting it out there that Liz Truss and the Business Secretary Kwasi Kwarteng went to the Treasury, i.e. went to Rishi Sunak, asking for these sanctions to be imposed right back at the start of April. And the story goes that they weren't that forthcoming at that point. Now,
I'm smiling because the story goes by the people who've put it out there that this is what happened. So
and there's
what
always
do we
another
think?
side.
Is it true? Have you got anybody backing this up? Or is this just a way to put down your opponent?
Well, no doubt there is some of that, but it must be said that there isn't specific denial. What there is the actuality that these sanctions did in fact happen, just not in April. They came in a little bit later. So no doubt there was probably some arguments with the Treasury and about coordinating these sanctions, as the government said, throughout this process with international partners. But I think there is probably a grain of truth to this, as there is to all of the stories that we see that are being put forward by all of the camps. Of course, it hasn't just been this new story on sanctions, but over the weekend on migration, on China.
I was going to come to that because the first story, it's a bit of a he said, she said, but on the migration issue and how they're going to solve the problem there, stopping the illegal migrants coming in, there is a difference in policy. So do you want to explain that?
There is. Rishi Sunak came forward with a 10-point plan. Now, some of these points are more vague than others. Some of them are specific, like a cap on numbers coming in every year, on numbers of refugees. Others are a bit more vague, like Rishi Sunak promising to work better with the French authorities. I'm not sure how he's going to do that in actuality. But yes, 10 points from Rishi Sunak.
One of those reports by Alexander Downer also did say that one of the things you had to do was come up with a plan to work better with the French authorities. So I can see where that's come from, Home Office report.
And yet John Redwood, for example, a backer of Liz Truss, saying over the weekend, making friends with Macron isn't necessarily the easiest thing to do or the way to fix it. So, yeah, I think we probably do need to see some more detail on some of these points, but clearly he has put forward some suggestions on this issue. Liz Truss putting forward a smaller number of suggestions, working with new international partnerships, expanding on the Rwanda plan. That's her idea. Now, both of these candidates say they support the Rwanda plan, but they want to go further in different areas and try and make it work, because clearly it hasn't been the most successful ploy as of yet.
And then you also mentioned the China, how they're both going to, whether it's confront or deal with it. So what are the different policies there?
Well, Rishi Sunak has brought forward clear policy in terms of banning Confucius institutes. Now, these are the sort of Chinese Communist Party government organisations within universities, facilitating students at universities. Though there are 30 of those will be banned under Rishi Sunak, but also further protections for critical national infrastructure in stopping Chinese investment or takeover of firms that are critical to national infrastructure.
That's nothing new, though.
That is
Tory
continuation
party,
of policy.
exactly, that's a continuation.
But what Liz Truss and her campaign says with regard to Rishi Sunak's policy announcements over the weekend is that this seems like a bit of a change of heart. It was only about 6 or 7 months ago that Rishi Sunak was trying to look for new investment opportunities with China, and he has been in the past more supportive of, for example, the Chinese firm Huawei coming in and being part of
But she was part of government, whether that was David Cameron's, Theresa May's, Boris Johnson's, and that was happening then as well. So she's changed her mind on this then as well?
No, I think it's certainly true to say that there are different positions that both of these candidates have taken, although looking at, for example, what IPAC, the International Parliamentary Alliance on China, says, one of the co-chairs of which is Ian Duncan Smith. Now, he's supporting Liz Truss and has been saying that some of these international actions have been supported by Liz Truss, being one of the firmer people on China. However, Liz Truss has, of course, been Foreign Secretary, so you might expect that she's been saying more about China in the last year or so when Rishi Sunak hasn't.
But it is a big debate this evening because I think general consensus is that Liz Truss is doing better with the members. Rishi Sunak will definitely have to have a polished performance tonight if he's to appeal beyond the members to the public to try and push the members to support him. How do you think it'll go this evening?
Yeah, that's a really, really important point because this does seem to be the strategy of the Rishi Sunak campaign, sort of almost appealing over the heads of the membership, saying, look, we need to look at the next election. What will be the best prospectus to go to the country with? What do the wider country think, not just the membership? And it has to be said, Rishi Sunak has had a very polished performance in the two previous public debates that we've seen. He's been seen to be, by the public in the polling that has been done, the snap polling after these debates, he's been seen to be doing better than Liz Truss in those debates. However, when it comes to other polling, for example, not just with Tory party members, but also when it head-to-head versus Starmer, Liz Truss has been gaining ground there. So different format tonight, just one-on-one. We'll see how things change.
Tom Howard, as always, up to speed with what's happening. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, the former Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, is widely considered to be the underdog in the race to be the next PM, as I was just discussing with Tom Howard. But his team are expecting a polished performance tonight, as we were saying. So let's speak to the senior Tory backbencher, Robert Halfont, chairman of the Education Select Committee and a backer of Rishi Sunak. So, Robert, great to have you with us today. I have to say, though, it does seem to me slightly counterintuitive that you are backing Rishi Sunak, somebody who's always asked for tax cuts, always been on the case about fuel duty, getting those prices down. So why are you supporting the candidate who's not looking for tax cuts yet, rather than the candidate who is?
Well, the first thing I'd say is I'm supporting Rishi Sunak because I think you can be trusted when times are tough. During the COVID scheme, I mean, we all forget now, but he literally saved millions of jobs, thousands of jobs in my constituency of Harlow, millions of businesses and businesses in my constituency from literally crashing, from people being forced into destitution because of the furlough scheme and the way he handled finances during the pandemic. And I want a leader who is good in a crisis, and we do face very difficult times at the moment. The second reason why I'm supporting Rishi Sunak is because I believe that he is going to deal with tax cuts responsibly and deal with the economy responsibly. Of course, I want tax cuts, but we've got to also do something about the debt. The debt interest alone over the coming year is £80 billion. We overall owed something like £2 trillion in debt. Now, we have to deal with that because otherwise we won't have money for tax cuts. We won't have money for public services in the way that we would like, education, health, transport. But also, if we don't do tax cuts responsibly, what will happen is we'll increase inflation. What happens? Inflation increases, the cost of living increases, the prices go up even further when we do our daily shop. And our bills are high enough as it is. But the third reason why I'm supporting Rishi Sunak, and this is where I would challenge you, Esther, is I don't accept that he's not the cut the cost of living candidate. He's already spent £37 billion. That includes a £150 council tax rebate, for example. It includes £1,200 going to the 8 million of the most vulnerable families. It includes a 5p fuel duty cut, something you've mentioned I've campaigned for. It includes the energy rebate of £400. He also, he increased corporation tax, but don't forget he cut tax business rates for hospitality, the retail sector, the leisure sector, that's millions of businesses, by £7 billion over the past a year. So this idea that he's some tax-raising so-called socialist chancellor is nonsense. He's actually cut the cost of living when it counts, dealing with the cost of living responsibly and the economy responsibly, and is shown to be good when times are tough.
So, having said all that, and without doubt he supported people right through the pandemic, but we are now taxing people higher than we probably have for about 70 years. But why do you think that he's doing so badly, if the polls are to be believed, with the members, when he did so well with MPs?
Well, I think polls come and polls go. Clearly, if somebody says they're going to cut taxes straight away, that's going to be popular. So what Rishi Sunak is not doing the easy option. He's actually telling the membership and the public at large the truth that we have to cut taxes responsibly. When he's been able to cut the cost of living, he's done so by spending £37 billion. But we can't just magic money from anywhere. We have to get down the debt. We have to cut inflation. And I think as he's getting that message out to the membership, and also talking about other things in terms of the dealing with the NHS backlog, dealing with migration problems that we face, I think that more and more the membership will come to him. And what's important is many of the polls show for the public that Rishi is somebody who can beat Keir Starmer. The polls also show that in over 70% of the seats that we won in 2019, that the Conservatives won in 2019, Rishi is best placed to win those seats as leader and as Prime Minister of our country.
I've seen those polls as well, Robert, so I know what you're talking about. So do you think, as it's the members who are going to have the vote here, do you think it was a mistake for Rishi to have resigned from Boris Johnson's government? Do you think that's what's put him lower within the minds of our members?
Well, look, the idea that all the candidates were behaving like nuns before the Prime Minister went is nonsense. You know, as a Conservative MP, as well as I do, that the leadership candidates had their proxies over the past few months and were going about their business trying to tap up MP support. I think that the former Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, he resigned at the very last minute. He was loyal to the Prime Minister to the end. I think that most of the party, sadly, and I say this very sadly because I was a fan of Boris Johnson, but had reached breaking point, particularly with the scandal involving the former Deputy Chief Whip, and he resigned at that time. But what we've got to do now is not focus on the past, but look to the present and the future. And I think that Rishi Sunak, he will restore trust, he will rebuild the economy and reunite the country. And I think that he is best placed to win a historic fifth term for the Conservatives because he's being responsible about the economy. He's cut the cost
Robert
of living.
Halfon, thank you very much indeed for joining us again today. Thank you for your time. Now, Education Secretary James Cleverly is backing Liz Truss for leader and talked to GB News a little bit earlier. Let's have a look.
We had the privilege of having Liz Truss on the show last week, and I'll tell you what I thought, and I think what the viewers thought at the end of that. They felt she had a chance to talk, and they felt they had a chance to get to know her. They felt they got a chance to hear about things that weren't just politics. And you know what? 82% of them decided that they liked her. Now, whether they were going to be 82% of the membership or not, I'm going to say to you, if she continues in that way and she's interviewed in that way and we get to see the real Liz Truss, would you accept that this election is hers to lose?
Well, look, what you've just said doesn't surprise me. I've known Liz for decades, and we've been good friends. So I think it's only fair that I'm open about that. So I had a positive predisposition towards her running as Prime Minister anyway. But what's really struck me is, as I say, working with her in the Foreign Office, seeing how she's dealt with the incredible difficult situations that we are faced with internationally. Russia's invasion of Ukraine, China's economic leverage in the developing world, and a whole load of other issues too numerous to mention. But on top of that, of course, I've seen the more private, personal side of her. You know, the fact that she is incredibly clever, but also she can be very, very light-hearted and fun to be with. And I really hope that through this process, people will get to see not only the tough side of her that's been dealing with these international crises that we find ourselves in the midst of, but also that human side, the side that I see. And I think that combination is exactly what we need as a future Prime Minister.
Thank you there. Now, coming up, two damning reports from MPs on the chronic staffing shortages in health and social care. Jeremy Hunt, the former Health Secretary and Chairman of the Health Select Committee, will be joining me shortly. But first, let's take a quick break.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know. The latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We're trying to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back. It's 12:25. Now, the government has announced a monumental shift in NHS IVF rules. Fertility treatment will soon be available to same-sex female couples in England for free. Under the old rules, female same-sex couples are required to pay thousands of pounds for artificial insemination, unlike heterosexual couples, before being eligible for NHS-funded fertility treatment. Last year, a lesbian couple from Windsor launched a judicial review claiming that the NHS fertility sector in England discriminated against LGBTQ families. GB News' Ellie Costello has been to speak to them.
It's such a win for women's rights.
Meet Megan and Whitney Bacon-Evans.
I mean, I just had a vision. I'm gonna cry out, of like when people walk down the street one day and just see loads of like lesbian couples with kids and know, hey, we helped you create that.
They're a married lesbian couple who have spent the past 2 years campaigning to make access to fertility treatment equal for same-sex female couples. And now they've done it. The Women's Health Strategy for England has pledged to make fertility treatment available for same-sex female couples on the NHS. This wouldn't have been possible without Whitney and Megan's campaign. They've been together for 14 years, including 4 years long distance. And after Whitney moved from Hawaii to the UK to marry Megan, they decided they wanted to start a family. It was only then when they realised there'd be a financial barrier.
But then when we looked into it more and we found out the eligibility criteria, in order to receive funding on the NHS that we realised there's discrimination in place. And that's when we were really, really shocked. And we were like, no, hold up. Something has to be done about this.
I was like, it's 2020. Surely this shouldn't be happening, because in the eyes of the law, we can get married. So why did that not transfer to the fertility sector?
Prior to the Women's Health Strategy that was published just last week, same-sex female couples had to self-fund 6 to 12 rounds of artificial insemination. Now, same-sex couples can receive 6 rounds of artificial insemination on the NHS, followed by IVF if needed. A Department of Health and Social Care spokesperson told GB News this policy change means same-sex female couples can access NHS-funded fertility services in a more equitable way. We intend this change to take effect from April 2023. Meghan and Whitney have decided to fund their own fertility treatment privately. They embarked on this campaign to help other female same-sex couples.
We heard from a lot of our followers that they had to give up on their hopes and dreams of creating a family, or that they had instead found a donor online and put themselves into dangerous and vulnerable situations. So when we found that out, we were like, this cannot continue. So we decided that we wanted to try our best to do what we could to try and change it. You know, you get a lot of people who say, well, I don't think any fertility treatment should be on the NHS, or mainly it is the fact that, well, straight couples have, access to the NHS because it is a medical need. Yours is a lifestyle choice. And that is just so frustrating when we get told
There's
that.
deep-rooted homophobia that comes out, and not even deep-rooted. People are just blatantly homophobic. Some people do not think that LGBTQ plus people are deserving of a family.
No matter how much we try, we cannot create a child together.
It's not working.
And it's just the same as a heterosexual couple that has infertility issues. No matter how much they've tried, they cannot create a child together. So why are we saying, when we're exactly the same position, that one couple deserves it more than another based on the fact of who they love?
We're also incredibly grateful for Stonewall as well, for their support, as well as their IVF for All campaign.
A Stonewall spokesperson said, "We are delighted that the UK government has listened to our call for fair and equal access to IVF treatment. This is a giant step towards a world where LGBTQ plus people have the same opportunity as everyone else to build a loving, thriving family of their own."
And our hopes for the future are that there's going to be, hundreds of thousands of LGBTQ plus families to come that are going to be able to create their dream family with no barriers. So this is just such a win for all of us women out there.
Ellie Costello, GB News.
Still to come, I'll speak to former Health Secretary Jeremy Hunt on the crisis in our NHS, and we'll discuss how the cost of living crisis and the war in Ukraine is squeezing farmers here in the UK. I'll speak to the Labour MP Chris Matheson about that. But first, it's your news update.
Good afternoon, it's 12:30. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. MPs are warning that the greatest staffing crisis in NHS history is creating a serious risk to patient safety. The Health and Social Care Committee says research shows the health service is short of 12,000 doctors and 50,000 nurses and midwives. It's also warning the government has no decisive strategy to help. An independent review has found Cricket Scotland to be institutionally racist. The report by consultancy firm Plan 4 Sport cites over 440 examples and failings in 29 out of 31 indicators. Cricket Scotland's entire board resigned before the report's publication, saying it would allow new structures to be created to implement the report's recommendations. The final 2 candidates to become Prime Minister will face their first televised head-to-head debate tonight. Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak have been trading blows over immigration, China and tax cuts. The Foreign Secretary and the former Chancellor are vowing to toughen controls on migration. Police are investigating after a death threat was made against the Government Trade Minister Penny Mordaunt. A letter sent to the former Tory leadership candidate during the Tory leadership contest reportedly threatened to shoot her in the head. Hampshire police say measures have been put in place to protect Miss Mordaunt and her family. Boris Johnson says the UK will help celebrate the people of Ukraine when it hosts the Eurovision Song Contest next year. The European Broadcasting Union have announced that Britain would step in on behalf of Ukraine. The UK was runner-up to the Ukrainian entry Kalish Orchestra. Culture Secretary Nadine Dorris says the contest will reflect Ukrainian creativity. TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's market. The pound will buy you $1.207 and €1.179. The price of gold currently stands at £1,433 and 77 pence per ounce.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Hi there, Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office. Bright spells for many today, but also a few showers just about anywhere, and it'll be just a little bit cooler compared with the weekend. Low pressure is moving away into Scandinavia. Behind that, well, a cool north to northwesterly airflow and a couple of weather fronts just dangling in for southern parts of Scotland, northern England as well. That's where there'll be the focus for the showers. Some heavy downpours for southeast Scotland and northeast England, perhaps the odd rumble of thunder. Elsewhere, showers more scattered. Just about anywhere could catch one, but equally there will be some bright spells. Not a great deal of sunshine, a lot of cloud around, and feeling a bit cooler compared with the weekend. Still the potential for 25 Celsius in the southeast and still feeling quite humid here, whilst it will be quite fresh for the north of Scotland, Northern Ireland as well. And this northerly breeze will push areas of cloud and some showers southwards across central and eastern England overnight. With the cloud, for many, it's going to be a mild night, 13, 14 Celsius in the south, 11 to 12 in the north. A bright start for many on Tuesday, but still areas of cloud floating around for northern, central and southeast England. And here we'll see some showers developing once again. Also showers drifting in for Scotland and Northern Ireland. In between some sunny spells, I think the best of any dry and sunny weather will be across Wales and the southwest. 22, 23 Celsius here, 25 for London, 16, 17s for Scotland and Northern Ireland. So feeling quite fresh. And then the breeze eases finally on Tuesday night. And with light winds, with clear spells for many, a cooler night to come. Showers in the north and the east continue for a time before eventually disappearing. And Thursday and Friday, well, it's roughly similar. Bright spells and showers and temperatures not far from average.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back. A record 6.6 million people are on NHS waiting lists, and today a report by MPs lays bare what it calls the greatest workforce crisis in the NHS history. Burnout, bullying, pension rules and low pay are contributing. Well, joining me now is Jeremy Hunt, former Health Secretary and the Chair of the Health Select Committee and Health and Social Care. So, Jeremy, bit of a damning report here, and it's a whole host of things: bullying, sexism, pensions. So how are we going to solve the problem?
Well, good morning, or in fact, good afternoon, Esther. I'm very pleased to be with you on the show. I think the truth is there are lots of things that you would find in any large organisation. I mean, no one is completely free of, bullying and harassment and all those kinds of issues. But the fundamental problem that we lay bare in this report is our failure as a country to train enough doctors and nurses over very many years. And that is because government after government has said, it doesn't matter if we don't quite train enough doctors because we can always import them from overseas. And the fact is that COVID was a global pandemic. Everyone's got their COVID backlog. There's a shortage of 2 million doctors and 15 million nurses worldwide. And it is just time we took a decision as a country that we have the biggest health system in the world with the NHS. We're going to train the numbers we actually need.
So I've seen the vacancies are 105,000 or thereabouts, and we need an extra, near as damn it, 500,000 by 2034. So, I have to say there's a couple of questions here. How are we going to pay for it, and where are we going to get all those people if we're already short of 105,000?
Well, it's actually 500,000 more people we'll need in the NHS and 500,000 more in the social care system. So it's about 1 million altogether. And there has never been any shortage of people who want to work in these sectors. I mean, universities are full of people who want to become doctors and nurses. And indeed, there are people who don't go to university who want to work in the care system, and they do an absolutely brilliant job. We do have to pay more. It's true that it costs 250 grand to train a doctor. But if you don't train enough, all that happens is what happens now, which is that we spend £6 billion a year on locum doctors and agency nurses because there is this big shortage. And so we are wasting more money than countries like France and Germany on these temporary doctors and agency nurses when we shouldn't be. And that's why it's just a false economy not to train enough doctors in the first place.
But I am going to press you a little bit more here on the culture issues, because I see that 7% of doctors are quitting within 3 years of qualifying. So something has to be wrong if lots of people want to work there, if so many are quitting straight away. And I have to say, 77% of women make up the workforce, and yet they don't think they've got the opportunities to excel or become surgeons. They think there's a bit of a Me Too culture there, sexual harassment and bullying. So I want to drag us right back to that culture issue. What is going wrong in the NHS?
Well, there are definitely those issues. And so what young doctors and young nurses often talk about is the intensity and the pressure of work. Last year, we lost 500,000 days to stress, anxiety, and other psychiatric conditions. Those are properly diagnosable conditions. That's 500,000 days of work from NHS staff. But we also have a lot of women, as you say, a lot of people from ethnic minorities, and some parts of the medical establishment have been traditionally a closed shop for men. It's been, a bit like the old boys club. But that has changed, and we now have we've had very distinguished female presidents of the Royal College of Surgeons, the Royal College of Physicians, people leading British Medical Association. So things have been improving, but I think there is still a lot of glass ceilings in the NHS, which, just like every other organisation, they need to get rid of.
And I'll do a Quick question here as well on GPs, because when we're talking about we haven't got enough people in, I know this is the NHS, I'm now looking at maybe the hours that they're doing, because I'm looking at GPs in all the papers at the weekend. A fifth of them now are doing on average 26 hours a week, and that's down from 47 in 2001. Well, if you're only doing half the hours, you now need double the staff. That's adding to the staff shortage. What are we going to do with the GPs to get them, you know, quick answer, what are we going to do to get them back up to doing, as I'd say, a full week's work?
Well, what you're getting at the moment, Esther, is a vicious circle, because people are becoming a GP after 10 years of training. Maybe they're 28, 29 years old. They're finding that seeing 40 patients in one day in 10-minute slots is very stressful. And then they're saying, actually, I don't want to do this every day. I think I'll reduce it to 3 days or 4 days a week. But that, of course, puts more pressure on their colleagues. The other thing that's happening is, because there aren't enough GPs, a number of the newly qualified ones are saying, actually, I'm not going to be a salaried GP. I'm not going to be a partner. I'm just going to be a locum. And they could earn more than £200,000 a year if they did that. And what they're saying is, actually, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to work 3 days a week, and I'll keep my stress levels down. And that's what happens if you don't train enough doctors. It's a totally false economy, and it's time we recognise that and sorted this out.
Well, that sounds to me like full root and branch. You need to train more. I'd also say, I don't know what you think on this, if you have been trained, and it is maybe £250,000 of training, maybe you have to spend at least 5-10 years working for the NHS before you could quit, move on, or go somewhere else.
Well, I have a lot of sympathy for that view. I do think you have an obligation to give time back to the NHS if taxpayers have invested in you. In practice, it's not that these people are going abroad. That has happened in the past, but it's not a very big trend. It's that they're going part-time. And to deal with that, we've got to give people hope for the future, that this workforce crisis is going to properly be addressed. And even though it's very stressful now, it was stressful in the pandemic, and it's still stressful now, there is a plan in place. And I think our main recommendation is that be honest about the problem. Tell us how many doctors we're going to need in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and then put in place a plan to make sure we've got them.
Jeremy Hunt, thank you very much indeed for joining us this afternoon. Thank you. Now, back to the battle to be our next Prime Minister. We've heard from MPs earlier, but of course it's not up to them. It's up to around 170,000 Conservative Party members up and down the country. Well, joining me now is Harrison Ullman-Varty, who is an 18-year-old, who is the youngest Conservative councillor in the UK, and he was elected in May for Oatlands and Birkwood in Surrey. So, tell us, you know, why, at the age of 18, first question, you wanted to become a councillor?
Well, I've always been interested in politics and getting involved. It kind of started off, I would help out in my constituency, East and Walton, helping out my MP, Dominic Raab. And I was doing that for a few years, and I helped him out in the 2019 general election. And the locals came around, and they kind of approached me and said, would you be interested in running? So you only have to be 18, so I thought, well, I might as well go for it. I didn't want to be one of those people on Twitter who would just shout at people for not doing something or whatever. I wanted to be that person and go on there and bring stuff to the table myself. Well,
I have to say, good for you. But a lot of people might say, have you got the world experience that you need to do this job? And it's a very important job.
Yeah, of course. I mean, people say about experience, but, I mean, where I live, in my ward, which is Oatlands and Burwood Park, I've lived there for all 19 years of my life. And the person I was up against, the Lib Dem candidate who was closest to me, he's only been there, you know, about 6 or 7 years. So if we're going off experience, I guess you could say, well, you know, I've got a little bit more experience. Well, that's actually valuable. And I mean, I do get the whole life experience part, but when it comes to local politics, it's more about who knows the area the most and caring for the community and being involved in the community. And I think 19 years certainly does qualify.
Well, I love your gusto and I love your passion to do it. And I thought, well, maybe you bring a different voice, maybe a younger person's voice. I'm always saying that. Or, you know, have government got enough policies for young people? So talking about this leadership race, who is it you're backing and why?
I'll be backing Rishi Sunak, purely off the basis that he just seems more credible. I think he's got the most valuable experience. I know Liz Truss is experienced, but I think with him being in the Treasury, he has seen the state of the country's finances. He knows what it's like. And I think cost of living, the economy, that is at the forefront of everybody's minds at the moment. And that's the questions that people are asking. So I think he's naturally best suited to go from that position into Prime Minister.
Any specific policies you'd like to see for young people?
I mean, a lot of young people talk about green policies because it's always going to be, us dealing with it later on and all our kids. So I think we're heading in the right direction, with net zero. But for me personally, I don't really see it as, young or old. One of the things I'd actually quite like to see that, although I'm backing Rishi Sunak, one of the things I quite like that Liz Truss is doing is reversing the erasing corporation tax. I think now we've left the EU, we need to remain as competitive as we can.
Well, you've certainly got an old head on young shoulders. I'll give you that, because lots of younger people I've spoken to would be talking about, I can't get my foot on the housing ladder. We'd like to see more work done on housing. Or they might say, we need to get rid of the cost of going to university. It's way too high. Why should Conservatives be giving people debt? They shouldn't be doing that. So is there any issues that you're getting from people your own age saying, look, push this for us, Harrison? You've got in there, you've got your foot in the door, champion these causes.
I think there's kind of 2 points to it. I think, yes, you're right on housing. Where I live, like I said, in Elmbridge and Surrey, house prices are extortionate. You're looking at, in Esher, the average house price is like £1.1 million. So for someone my age, it's not an option. And you have to, venture out or whatever. And even if you do, it's still weigh out your debt. So house prices are definitely to a point where you have to be in a position where just not many people are. And also, I think even me just kind of standing and, going on TV shows such as this, I kind of almost act as a little bit of, a beacon to younger people to show that, they are allowed to speak, and we all know that, but it's, I'm happy to...
I'm laughing there. Do they see you, all honesty, I mean this in the nicest possible way, do they see you as a beacon or a little bit of a nerd?
Well, probably, it depends who you're asking. It depends who you're asking. I mean, some people, it depends on Twitter, then you're probably more negative response, but yeah. No, it depends who you're asking. I mean, to some, in fact, I've actually had a lot of left-leaning young people who have come up to me and said, look, my family are all Labour supporters and so am I, but I think it's really great that you're doing this, because even though on the political spectrum you're on the right, it's nice to see a different change.
Well, I think it's great to see you, and thank you very much for coming on here today and being put through your paces as well. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks for having me.
For all you're having. So, some breaking news now. An appeal court judge have ruled that doctors can stop providing life support treatment to 12-year-old Archie Battersby. Alice Porter is outside the court for us.
Hi there. Yes, Sir Andrew McFarlane, who's the most senior family court judge in England and Wales, said permission to appeal had been denied, and therefore, because the permission had been denied for there to be an appeal, it is therefore understood that this couldn't go any step further to the Supreme Court, where this leaves the family who've spent the last few months fighting to keep their son on a life support machine ever since he had this terrible accident more than 3.5 months ago. Where this leaves the family now is unclear. I mean, they may want to go through the European Court of Human Rights. That would be a very tricky approach, but as of today, this is not the judgment that they wanted. They've lost now 2 appeals in the Court of Appeal, and this will leave the family in a very difficult situation when it comes to their son that they've spent the last few months fighting to keep on a life support machine. There's some quite dramatic scenes here in court earlier when actually the father of Archie Battersby, Paul Battersby, actually had a suspected heart attack or stroke before going into court, and that's why this decision today was so delayed. It's understood he had to go to hospitals. Very dramatic scenes, but also the family tried to put forward what they believed as new evidence. I've seen some of the footage myself of Archie supposedly breathing independently, and so the family, I think, will be absolutely devastated by the decision today, and they've sort of very much maintained that Archie is not brain dead and completely refutes what previous judges have said. I think it's important to stress that this judgment that we've had today very much echoes what we've had previously in the Court of Appeal, that Mr. Justice Hayden said the concern was very much about what is in Archie's best interest, and he said that keeping him on a life support machine was protracting his death rather than prolonging his life, and that therefore it was not in his best interest to stay on a life support machine, and that is something that Mr. Andrew McFarlane has certainly agreed with today.
Alice Porter, Thank you very much indeed. Now, we all know our food is getting dearer, and it's not an easy time to be a farmer either. The Ukraine war is having a knock-on effect on prices and food productions here. Well, Labour MP for Chester led a debate in the Houses of Parliament on this very subject, and he joins me now. So, Chris, thank you for joining us. But before that, you're obviously watching Keir Starmer give his speech a little bit earlier on. What were your views on it, about this growth agenda he's setting?
Good morning, Esther. Many thanks for inviting me on today. I really welcomed what Keir had to say. He was very clear about our priorities, about being financially and fiscally responsible. He talked about using the unique attributes of the UK, our creativity, our science base, to drive forward that growth. And of course, he talked about the growth being fairly distributed right across the UK. So I really welcomed it. But this idea that is central is that, yes, we want to make sure that everyone gets the fair share, but you can only get the fair share if you have that economic growth, first of all. That was quite clear, and I welcome Keir's speech in that respect.
Now, Chris, you're on today really to talk about the debate you led last week about farming and the issues facing farmers there. So do you want to expand a little bit on that and then look to the solutions?
Yeah, look, these are tough times for everybody, but they're particularly tough times for farming, which, where you and I are MPs in Cheshire, but right across the country is such an important and often undervalued part of the economy, and also part of our national cultural life as well. We're seeing that there is a real squeeze on prices as we have a cost of living crisis. And one of the things I'm really concerned about is that that squeeze doesn't get all dumped on our farmers. We're hearing, for example, that 8% of dairy farmers every year are leaving the business, and there aren't people stepping up in order to replace them. There are real squeezes on the number of people that are available for work, for seasonal agricultural workers. And my debate last week was focusing on particularly the impact of the war. Shockingly, 60% of seasonal agricultural workers in the UK last year came from Ukraine. And of course, now they are all back home defending their homeland. So we have the workforce isn't there either. And we're getting this squeeze in prices. There's a reduction in fertiliser because there is a reduction, for example, in gas that makes the fertiliser. That means that yields are down. So these are really tough times with problem upon problem being felt by the farmers.
We've always had an issue with the workforce. And as you say, for the last couple of years, 60%, and in Scotland, it was 70% were coming from Ukraine. So what are we going to do about that workforce? We can't keep going round the world and getting their farmers. Are we going to have to say to our young people here or whoever here, you know, you want sustainable food, you want food, we need people now working in farms?
Absolutely, and we need to make it an attractive industry. We need to sell the attractiveness of being able to work outside, often in tough conditions. That might not be so attractive, but working out in the countryside. And also, to be fair, paying decent and fair wages for it. The farmers have had to cope with a pay rise to their farm labourers of around 11% on average in the last year. I'm not going to criticise people for wanting a better wage. We may have to pay for it as well. But you're absolutely right. This is an honourable tradition of our farmers, whether in Cheshire or right across the country, are proud of what they do, and they are proud of the contribution that they make. And we need to celebrate British farming and celebrate the produce that we make in this country that keeps the country fed.
Just very briefly, you talked about the cost of goods. So even if it was potatoes, the farmers were selling for £200,000, but they were sold for 4.2 million in the supermarket. So they're only getting 4.7% of the potato value. What would you want to do there? But you have to keep the answer very quick.
Share the cost. Don't dump it all on the farmers. There's a cost of living crisis. The supermarkets need to keep the costs down, but let's share those costs and share that burden fairly with the farming
Chris
community.
Matheson, thank you very much indeed. For a politician, you kept that answer short. Thank you. So you've been watching and listening to The Briefing with me, Esther McVeigh, standing in for Gloria De Piero. Join me again tomorrow at noon. Up next, It's On the Money with Liam Halligan, but for you now, let's leave you with the weather forecast.
Hi there, Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office. Bright spells for many today, but also a few showers just about anywhere, and it'll be just a little bit cooler compared with the weekend. Low pressure is moving away into Scandinavia. Behind that, well, a cool north to northwesterly airflow and a couple of weather fronts just dangling in for southern parts of Scotland, northern England as well. That's where there'll be the focus for the showers. Some heavy downpours for southeast Scotland and northeast England. Perhaps the odd rumble of thunder. Elsewhere, showers more scattered. Just about anywhere could catch one, but equally there will be some bright spells. Not a great deal of sunshine, a lot of cloud around, and feeling a bit cooler compared with the weekend. Still the potential for 25 Celsius in the southeast and still feeling quite humid here, whilst it will be quite fresh for the north of Scotland, Northern Ireland as well. And this northerly breeze will push areas of cloud and some showers southwards across central and eastern England overnight. With the cloud, for many, it's going to be a mild night, 13, 14 Celsius in the south, 11 to 12 in the north. A bright start for many on Tuesday, but still areas of cloud floating around for northern, central and southeast England. And here we'll see some showers developing once again. Also showers drifting in for Scotland and Northern Ireland. In between some sunny spells, I think the best of any dry and sunny weather will be across Wales and the southwest. 22, 23 Celsius here. 25 for London, 16, 17s for Scotland and Northern Ireland. So feeling quite fresh. And then the breeze eases finally on Tuesday night. And with light winds, with clear spells for many, a cooler night to come. Showers in the north and the east continue for